So today I'd like to talk to y'all a little bit about kids and sex. There's a few topics that I'm going to cover and a few examples that I'm going to give. So bear with me. Y'all know how I go um, in a long, big circle and I always come back around. So just be patient. And if I have to stop in the middle because I'm by a lake, I'll let you see the lake in a minute. But I want to look at it now. It's very inspiring. A few things about kids and sex. Adults teach kids shame. Shame is not like some natural phenomenon that kids learn, um, but it is something that we, in our inability to talk to kids, teach them. There are so many instances where we want to say something that's age appropriate to kids, and we don't know what to say, and we end up expressing to them our discomfort with the situation. And so they learn that the situation is discomforting, it's uncomfortable. And so, I mean, I could give you numerous examples. I feel like there are enough people giving examples from the straight world, so I'll go straight to the gay world as if they're so separate. But I mean, for example, what do you say to a child that you think, for whatever reason, you think that that child might be a homosexual? Well, if you don't say anything to that child was going to have that conversation. That child is going to learn what other people have to say about it. That child is going to learn what pop culture has to say about it. And usually, what pop culture has to say about it is quite disgusting. As you guys know, with just making fun of butch girls and effeminate boys. Um, but the same thing goes, for straight people when it comes to pregnancy and it comes to disease. I mean, think of this thing with kids and texting. You have middle school kids now who have cell phones, and their parents want them to have them, need them to have those phones. But what do they end up doing in India? A few years ago, there was a guy who filmed a girl giving him head, and immediate before she could even wipe the cum off her lips, he had sent that out to his friends, and his friends had sent it out to his friends, and it had eventually made its way to eBay India, and then they prosecuted the guy at eBay India and shut it down, and blah 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 blah, as opposed to taking any mature approach to it. That girl, she had to leave the country. She immigrated to Canada, and luckily her family was privileged enough to be able to take her to, a different location. And the guy, it's this thing. He's a stud. And anyway, didn't show his face like most porn anyway. Um, you don't even get to see the girl's face. Well, the thing about talking to kids about sex is you need to start by listening. You need to meet them where they are. And to meet them where they are, you need to hear what they have to say. You don't need to, if you look at that film, Kinsey, where he talks about how to do interviews and about how you can't, when you're listening to people, you can't judge people, even in your body language, because this is all read. And if you're judging people as they're telling you something, they're gonna start censoring what they say and hold back, and that's exactly what we don't want kids to do, because we don't want to teach kids that anything that they have to say is shameful. It's not. It's just what they know. They don't even have the capacity to filter a lot of the things. They're just doing it based on what we teach them. And so, yeah, I learned not to talk about my own sexuality as a kid through other people, you know, through the taunting, the teasing, and the toleration of the taunting and teasing that adults did. And the same thing goes for little girls and their bodies. I mean, if the only thing that we can do is laugh at them, just like the boys laugh at them when they start to grow breast, um, or like what I saw in my own school when I was a kid, a girl who grew some big old bitties, and the teachers treated her like she was the little licentious hot and hot. And I'm like, she is 13 years old. And just because her breasts are as big as water jugs does not mean that she's a whore or a prostitute. Now, granted, the men around her in her environment would treat her like that. Hey, girl, what's up, shorty? And then you could see that. Even they would do that to my cousins. I'm like, y'all see that that's a child. Yet and still, people treat them as if they are full grown adults with full grown adult sexualities. And so what they end up doing is teaching people love and abandon. And that's what the whole point of it is. And let me talk about love and abandon because I think a lot of people, for a lot of people, that's very cerebral, theoretical. And I don't think that it is. When you are an adult and a kid raises a subject, like I have a little cousin who was talking about girls, 8, 9 years old, girls got cooties because they rub on their thing down there. This is, the kind of language that he says. And luckily, he said it in front of a group of adults in my family who, didn't call him foul mouth, didn't shame him for saying that thing, but they sat him down and said, you know what? When you get 15, 16 years old, you remember that a lot of people got cooties. And they went on, to explain to him in a way that was appropriate for him to say that, you need to be aware that everybody has a sexuality, that you don't need to be throwing yourself out there. And I think it's one of those positive ways, but when we make kids start hiding what they do, they start hiding what they do because they're going to do it. Now, I don't know. There are some extremes. There are some parents who let their, teenagers have sex in their homes. I think there was this, this big thing about Sarah Palin and her kid. I know that my partner, his father, um, I think he was like 15 or 16 years old, and he had sex in their house, and their father, facilitated. And people do the same thing with drinking. Whatever it is that you're going to do as a parent, make sure that you know why you're doing it, and make sure that you're not just covering up and not saying anything just because you don't know what to say. And make sure that you're not demonizing that kid because the kids are going to explore sex and sexuality. Now, if you can guide them in ways that are positive as opposed to just letting the world around them teach them what to say, then you're actually getting somewhere. And you're teaching them that they don't have to be abandoned in love because what you're doing is abandoning them. You love them, but when it comes to certain things, you don't have anything to say. You don't have any words for them. And as a matter of fact, you become hostile towards them. Now, if you could actually just listen, not even say anything, but listen in a non judgmental way, sit them down and say, I'm here to hear what you have to say. And let them go on, and they will go on tangents, and they will take a while. They're gonna test you and see, you really want to hear what I have to say, and you gotta keep reeling them in, and let them know that yes, what you have to say is important. I was in a situation at a school where a kid called me a fag, and I had a conversation, with the entire class about it. And it was mostly them talking and me saying, things like, well, how else have you seen kids, feel uncomfortable, and ways that the kids are teased and taunted again? Because teasing and taunting, while it sounds like it's such a small thing for us as adults, it's a huge thing. Because if you think about it, uh, when it comes to sex and sexuality, that's most of where kids get their information, and discourse around it is in the negative ways. And so we could say to the kids, say what you need to say. I'm not gonna, laugh at you. I'm not gonna giggle in those uncomfortable ways that other kids do when they start talking about these subjects. Um, that's when we really get to the business of growing up. I've seen so many adults who are just kids who throw their hot wet holes around, their stiff poles around, and that's all that they know how to do. That is all that they know how to do to give and get affection. And so people start bartering with that, bartering with their sexualities, and in fact, it's the only place that they may feel powerful. Then you start talking about different ways that people are disenfranchised in societies based on race and gender and class, and there is no wonder why, you know, um, poorer people, Muslims in India, you see it. Muslims in India taking our Hindu girls and blah blah blah. There's no wonder. Why? Because that is the only place that they can feel powerful is their bodies. And so they use their bodies. And they're going to get you, sucker. So again, I would say it's everywhere in the world that I've been that there are sexualities that are demonized, there are bodies that are demonized, and people use their sexual agency. It's the only one that they have, that they can use in private spaces, including rape. And our silence, our shame breeds demons.